All right, great. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:04 p.m. on the 7th of December, 2023. I am Mike Capuano. I'm the chairman of the planning board. With me tonight is Vice Chair Amelia Aboff, our clerk, Jahan Habib, members Michael McNeely, Debbie Howard Easton, and Luke Schuster. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted via remote participation. The video recording of these proceedings will be available on the city's website or by emailing planning@somervillema.gov. This meeting is being recorded. We have a number of items on our agenda tonight. And before we get to them, I kind of want to talk about logistics a little bit for this evening, because what we've got is a planning board meeting that was noticed for 6 o'clock, but we also have a joint hearing with the land use committee that is noticed to begin at 6:30, so in 25 minutes. My concern is we've got a couple of items that I think we can knock off fairly quickly, but that'll still bring us to 6:10, 6:15 or something. My concern is that the items that we have on our agenda are all fairly substantive, and I think will certainly any one of them will merit more than 20 minutes worth of discussion, including obviously we've got a new case that needs to be if it's taken up tonight will need to be presented. So what I'm afraid of is a situation in which we, in a few minutes, get to take on one of the cases that's kind of substantive, then have to break and take a recess at 6:30, convene with the land use committee for, I honestly have no idea how long that is going to take. We have, I think, 2 amendments that are coming before the land use committee, but I just don't know how long that discussion will be, what the public testimony will look like, and the land use committee. And then if it's prior to 9 o'clock, taking up a case that we've already started discussion on, I think it's a little bit jumbled to start something, take a break for an indeterminate period of time, make everybody twiddle their thumbs to kind of finish a presentation or finish some questions, just to come back to it potentially at the end of the night in a couple of hours. So what I think I'd like to do, and I not to disparage anybody, but you've all got cases that we I think are important to talk about. There's 1 or 2 or 3 agenda items I think we can get through pretty quickly prior to 6:30, but I don't think it's kind of beneficial to anybody, whether it's for the applicant or the members of the board or the members of staff, to start something, start discussion, pause it, and come back at a period of time that might be at an hour or 2 later. So what I think I want to do, and unless anybody on the board has a strong feeling one way or the other, I think what I'd like to do is try to get through some of our kind of quick cases first. I will, because we have a new agenda item, which is the Alpine Street case, right? John, did you read into the record the Alpine Street case, or is that new for tonight? I think it is.
It's new, Mr. Chair. I would need to read it.
Yeah, so that would need to be at least read into the record to comply with our requirement of at least opening that case. But then what I think I want to do is let's get through the 2 or 3 very quick agenda items that we've got. That'll take us a few minutes. And instead of kind of wasting everybody's time for a 6-minute presentation or a 6-minute conversation, just to potentially come back in a few hours to try to remember where we're at, I think logistically it makes sense to recess until the conclusion of the land use committee, just so we don't get in a position where we're starting and stopping something that is quite substantive and require quite a bit of discussion and dialogue. Does anybody have an objection to that? So for the purpose of at least identifying what's on the agenda, we have meeting minutes from November 16th, 2023. We'll take that up quickly. We have a public hearing that has been opened and has been requested to be continued to December 21st, that's 620 Broadway. We also have other items that have been opened and heard. Those are 45 Mystic Avenue, 28 to 44 Broadway, and 32 Prospect Street. We also have a new case that I will have John read in a moment, which is 2 to 4 Alpine Street. So what I think I want to do is take up the minutes, do the continuance, move to 32 Prospect Street, and presuming that will not take up more than the next 20 minutes, recess from there, and then reconvene solely as the planning board at the conclusion of the land use committee. And if it's before 9 o'clock, we'll take up another agenda item, or potentially multiple if we work through them. And if not, we'll reconvene, continue those agenda items, because we don't take up agenda items after 9 p.m. pursuant to the rules and regs of the planning board. And we will revisit them on the 21st of December, or when we can get to them, because I think the 21st will also be somewhat full. This is just kind of the nature of what happens when we have these joint hearings with the land use committee, but it was kind of the last opportunity the planning board had to be able to meet with them before their calendar year ends. So, Jahan, do you mind just reading into the record the notice of public hearing for 2 to 4 Alpine Street, and then we can kind of move on with our other business?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Thank
2
you.
to 4, sure, you're welcome. 2 to 4 Alpine Street, PNZ 21-119. 2 to 4 Alpine Street, Somerville LLC proposes to develop a 4-story general building and establish a household living use in the mid-rise 4 zoning MR4 zoning district, which requires site plan approval and 1 special permit for the household living use.
Thank you, John. And before we move forward, I just need to make a disclosure. I was not present for the meeting on 11/16, but I have had a chance to review that meeting, the video as well as the text. So I've now caught up. I will be submitting my affidavit in probably after this meeting or tomorrow, but I will be fully compliant with the ability to be able to deliberate and vote on these matters. Yes, Debbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I likewise missed the November 16th meeting, but I watched the video and submitted my affidavit.
Okay. Excellent. Let's take up the meeting minutes first. Has everybody had a chance to review the November 16th, 2023 meeting minutes? Does anybody have any comments, questions, suggestions, revisions? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Amelia.
I do think that we made an amendment to the meeting minutes that were adopted in the November 16th meeting, and I'm not sure that if that needs to be addressed in the record of their adoption.
Can you explain what you are referring to make sure that we have what we need?
I'm sorry, at the head of the agenda, at the head of the minutes, there is a description of the adoption of the minutes from prior meetings. We did make a correction to one of the sets of minutes that we approved at one of the prior meetings. And I can't remember in this moment what that correction was.
So for the purpose of these meeting minutes, if they can just appropriately reflect the fact that an amendment was made in the November 16th meeting on meeting minutes that were discussed at that meeting, will that address your concern?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments or questions or revisions for the November 16th meeting minutes? Seeing none, the chair moves to adopt the draft meeting minutes of November 16th as the official meeting minutes of the Somerville Planning Board, seconded by Amelia. Stephen, can you please call the roll?
Sure. This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Amelia Aba.
Aye.
Deborah Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
And Michael Capuano.
Aye. Congratulations, everybody. We have meeting minutes. Next up on our agenda that I'd like to take is the requested continuance of 620 Broadway. 620 Broadway has requested a continuance to the December 21st, 2023. The chair moves to continue that agenda item to December 21st, seconded by Amelia. Stephen, if you please call the roll.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Deborah Howard Easton,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Michael Capuano.
Aye. Okay, that agenda item is continued. I'd like to take up 32 Prospect Street, please. If the applicant, the applicant's team and the applicant's representative could identify themselves, be unmuted, and anything else that they might need to do. I don't foresee any additional presentation, but I just want to make sure that the applicant and their team is comfortable with where we're at. And Steve, are you making sure that these folks were able to be unmuted and recognized and all that?
Yes, through the chair, I am, let me see, I'm going
see
to
two
promote.
hands.
Yep, I'm going to promote Alex Chan and Brian Timko, both to panelists. So Brian and Alex, you'll briefly have to leave the meeting and then you'll come back in as panelists.
I see both of you. Can I hear both of you?
Yes,
Yes, Mr. Oh, hi, Mr. Chair. I'm Brian Tico, and together with Alex Chan, we both run Life Alive.
Great. So thank you. I know you had a nice, healthy discussion with the planning board a few weeks ago. We received some testimony in that meeting, all of which was very kind of supportive of your application. I've obviously reviewed the tapes and materials that you've all submitted and the staff has prepared, and I kind of share everybody's enthusiasm with what you're trying to do. I think it is a formula business per the regulations, but I think you don't quite operate as such, and your business doesn't really kind of fit the spirit of kind of what we think of a formula business. So I think it's a great application. You've certainly got the support of the community that's come out in support of you. You've also seemingly have the support of the majority of the planning board, and you also have the support of me. So I don't know if the planning board has any further comments or discussion points that they'd like to raise between ourselves or with staff or with the applicant team. Okay. Seeing none, following public testimony, review of the submitted materials, and deliberation of the required considerations outlined in the zoning ordinance, I move to approve with conditions outlined in the staff memorandum the special permit to establish a formula business principal use along the pedestrian street in the high-rise district, seconded by Amelia. Stephen, if you could please call the roll.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Amelia Aboff,
Aye.
Deborah Howard Easton,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
and Michael Capuano.
Congratulations, you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We're just incredibly excited to be in Union Square. We can't wait.
Thank you all.
Neither can I.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you, you too.
Okay. So of the other agenda items that we've got, which would be 45 Mystic Avenue, 28 44 Broadway and 2 to 4 Alpine Street. We're going to wait to see when this land use committee that we've got in 11 minutes will end. And so long as we get out before 9 o'clock, I will continue this meeting of the planning board with one of those. My guess is as a in recognition of who has already been opened and heard and had discussion by and between folks. I'm probably more likely to take up 45 Mystic and or 28 to 44 Broadway because they have already had discussions. But at the same time, I'm also contemplating just taking up 2 to 4 Alpine Street so we can at least get a presentation in by that applicant first to be able to recognize the fact that they have not yet spoken with us, but we'll make that determination as we come up. Does anybody else have any comments or discussion or questions before I seek to recess the board? Yes, Luke.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, I'm sure this has all been thought through, and I bet the awkward like 6 to 6:30 parcel planning board meeting, then the land use, and then the kind of donut back to planning board. Like, I bet there's just a reason why we're stuck with this slightly awkward approach to these joint meetings. But since we've got 10 minutes to waste, no, I'm just curious, like, is it worth thinking about a different approach to these so that we avoid the donut approach? Or...
So I agree with you. It used to be the case that, and I'm talking years ago, that the land use committee would meet at 6 o'clock with the planning board. So that we would open our planning board meeting and immediately jump into the joint hearing. It just has been the case over the last couple of years that the land use committee has said we meet at 6:30. And since the planning board already has legal notices that start at 6 o'clock, we're kind of in that strange position. So I think it's a logistics issue that might be beneficial to be worked out with the land use committee itself. I don't know if there's a reason that they want to start at 6:30 and not when we start at 6. The concern that I have with us starting at 6:30 is that when we notice our things several weeks in advance, we notice them for 6 o'clock. So it becomes a little bit tricky, but I think I agree with you. I never think this is a great way of doing it, because you are left with, let's see what happens at the end of the land use committee, and if we can get to people, we can. I would love to try to solve that problem, but I think that problem, because we have our own agenda that we need to address, it becomes tricky to say we're just going to start at 6:30 on nights that we have land use committee meetings, because part of the reason that we have kind of these set meeting schedules is for people to know, when a planning board meetings. They are every other Thursday at 6 o'clock, right? Because the land use committee obviously meets many times when it's not a joint hearing. And I think their usual meeting time is whatever it is at 6:30. I don't know if that's a city council wide, all committees start at 6:30 question. It used to be that way, I think, because when people were coming in person much more frequently, to give people time, the opportunity to get from where they are to City Hall. I can tell you, I made the planning board meeting in City Hall by the skin of my teeth more times than I can count when I was driving in from my old firm in the Seaport. But it is something that I would love to be able to work out, and I don't know the best way to do it. And it might be with whoever the chair of the land use committee is starting in the new year to see if we can work something out. But I don't. That's kind of why we do the donut is we're always scheduled a particular time. They are always scheduled a particular time. The alternative, and something that we've done on a rare occasion, it's not something I like doing, is joining the land use committee for a joint hearing on days that we don't otherwise have a regularly scheduled planning board meeting. Um, reason being, it takes another night out that, that we've got to plan for on a Tuesday. And, we all know, as being members of the planning board, every other Thursday we've got a plan to be at a meeting. It becomes a little trickier when we're planning multiple days that are not always set in stone. Particularly because a lot of these things are initiated by the land use committee. They have gotten, I think, better at acknowledging that the planning board is, I wouldn't say we're a volunteer body, but we're pretty close to it. We're not we're not expected to have the same amount of nights taken up by public meetings as our elected officials are. So that's why they, I think, have been welcome to move their meetings or schedule their joint hearings on nights that we are already going to convene. So that's kind of why it gets a little bit tricky, because we could do it at 6:30 on a Monday or 6:30 on a Friday. I don't really want to. I think it makes more sense to say we know we're all going to be here on every other Thursday. We should make that work. But to the extent that they could move their stuff to 6 o'clock so we can just get going, I would think that's easier for at least us. But they might say it's not easier for them, and we're kind of stuck in that same position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's all helpful context for why it's not easy to navigate. And I like your idea, by the way, of when there's a new chairperson of the land use committee, that might be an opportunity to think about it. But I get that there might not be anything better than what we're currently doing. So
right, and the acknowledgement is, they've only got like one. I think this might be their last meeting of the year. They might have one more or something, and it's not at this point. It's kind of not worth raising that until we figure out what next year is going to look like. I also don't love the idea. And how many of you have served on the CPC? I know Jahan has, Amelia has. I was the inaugural chairman of the CPC, and I want to say their meetings started at 7 o'clock. I don't know if that's changed. That was the worst thing we could have possibly done, because by the time we got through the first agenda item, we're all tired and hungry. So I like starting earlier, particularly when everybody's still coming in virtually from, most likely you're already at home. I know Aaron had zoomed in a couple of times from our office, but I don't like the idea of starting later. I like the idea of keeping it at 6, maybe 6:30 with the land use committee, but we can have that discussion for sure.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we have 3 minutes. So what I think I'm going to do is, does anybody else have anything pressing in the next 3 minutes? Okay. I'm going to recess the planning board and we will reconvene. There's a different link that I think you all should have gotten the invitation to. That will be the land use committee. And I'm going to X out on this. I'm pretty certain that staff is going to keep this link open with a little placeholder saying that we're in recess. Just because I don't think if they close out the meeting, I think it just ends and can't be restarted. So
This is
I'm
Steve
gonna,
Carey, the planning division. That's correct. I'll leave
Yeah.
this room open and I'll put up a slide saying that we're in recess.
Awesome. Okay. So let's do that. The planning board is now standing in recess, and we will reconvene at the conclusion of the land use committee joint hearing to see if it is appropriate to take up any additional case or cases at that time. See you all soon. room. We are technically still in recess, but as a reminder, the camera's still going. Bring up our meeting again. Okay. Where'd you go? Yeah. Okay. Stephen, are you there?
Am.
Okay. I think we're about ready to go. So if you could please take us out of recess and continue the recording, or at least take the thing off the screen.
I believe I have stopped sharing the slide.
Okay.
And I believe the recording continues automatically, but I can.
It does. It does.
Okay.
I have to formally bring the board back into session.
Gotcha.
At 6:54 p.m., the joint hearing between the planning board and the land use committee has concluded. The planning board has reconvened in its own capacity, to take up additional items on its agenda. The purpose of quorum, I'm Mike Capuano, present. Present also is Vice Chair Amelia Aboff, Clerk Jahan Habib, members Michael McNeely, Debbie Howard Easton, and Luke Schuster. I think I'm going to take some agenda items out of order, as is the discretion of the chair, and I think I'd like to bring up 28 to 44 Broadway. This case has previously been opened. It has been heard. We have taken testimony and we have had quite a bit of discussion. I'm wondering if the applicant and the applicant team and or the applicant team's representative can all be unmuted and have a screen share or whatever they might need.
This is Steve Carey in the planning division. I just promoted Jordan Smith. I will also promote John Beatty to panelists.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm not sure if you're waiting on me just to kind of confirm the team here.
Yes, please. If you could introduce yourself and the team for the record, that would be helpful.
Thank you so much. Good evening. Thank you, members of the board. The members of the team here tonight are myself, Sullivan Worcester, land use and planning consultant for the applicant, as well as my colleague Jennifer Schultz. We also have, there were some questions last time of a technical matter regarding the opening of the doors along the electrical room on the side of the building and the frequency of that, and the change to the blue bike station along Broadway. So my colleagues Charlie Rachel should also be joining, as well as Steve Sawyer from Mobility.
Okay, so we had quite a bit of discussion on this project at the meeting from which I was absent, but I, as you may have heard, I've reviewed all of the tapes and all the records. I do have some comments and questions that I'd like to make, but what I'd like to do first is invite my colleagues to or staff to make any comments or questions before we go. If there's any follow-up from the discussion from last time, there are a couple of things that I noted and I have some questions on, but does anybody want to go first? Yes, Amelia.
Mr. Chair, I believe there were a number of items that we were expecting the applicant to present new information on, and I'm not sure whether they want to begin with those or things that those are available today.
Yes, so we're happy to. I am gonna pass it over on the two items that I just mentioned, in terms of the electrical doors and mobility items to those who are going to be better able to answer those. So that'll be Charlie. If you can please share your screen to bring up the show the loading diagrams and discuss the electrical, and we'll of course be here to answer any other questions.
I'm trying to share my screen. I'm unable to right now.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Through the chair, I believe you should be able to. I can, let's see, I can make you a co-host temporarily, which I think should give you sharing privileges.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So Stephen, if you'd like to talk on the loading diagram, please.
Okay, I'll start out. So this basically is unchanged from the original approved as far as the loading areas from the original approved project. One item is currently there's 3 parking spaces. There'll be 1 parking space added between the loading areas. So really there's no change there. Also, the Blue Bike station, what happened was previously it was divided into 3 pads, as you can see there. Now it's consolidated into 2 pads. As far as any of the interaction with the Blue Bikes in the loading zone, it's immaterial as far as the small change of that location. So I think keep it quick and quick. Actually, there may be less interaction as Blue Bikes push further away from that into park. So it might be a situation. I think that that'll cover it.
Amelia and others, does that satisfy some of the new information that you were looking for?
That does satisfy the information I was looking for, just to understand how those pieces were in relation to one another. Thank you very much.
With a new platform on doing this, a little different for me to see everybody at once. I'm trying to see if there's a way I can change the view so I can see all of my colleagues. I can't. I have to keep scrolling, so hang on. Does anybody know if I can change the view? Okay, view options. I'm just trying to see more than like 3 people and a shared screen, so I'm just having a little difficulty. Which I can't,
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
Michael McNeely seems to have a suggestion.
Okay, what do we got?
Well, first off, did hitting the little hand emoji kick my picture up on your screen? Is it easier to see?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's also weird because I can't actually use like a scroll. I have to hit a down button to see more people, which is
Yeah.
As we're getting into this platform, I'm realizing things that I don't love about it.
Yeah. So I did have one thing to bring up, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, of course.
So maybe I missed it somewhere in the comments just made there. My audio sounded a little bit out for a second. I definitely understand the Blue Bikes changes, so that's helpful. Thank you. I don't know if I got an update on the loading bays for the transformers and electrical equipment. So if you could just tell me a little bit more about the frequency of that, the time of day in which you expect that to occur, because if I recall correctly, it's abutting residential neighbors, and I could imagine myself being pretty frustrated if I were abutting that door and it goes off at 6 in the morning or something like that. Obviously, there could always be emergency events that you can't, expect ahead of time, but it'd be helpful to understand what, Eversource is kind of committed to in terms of, frequency of access and, expected plans on maintenance and stuff like that.
Absolutely. They said that Ali from RW Sullivan confirmed with Eversource that they would need to access it at least once a year, at very most twice. And that's just do regular maintenance on the pad mounted equipment. And it would be during the working hours, but it'd be very infrequent. At very most, he said at 2 times a year. And we're talking, from here, right here. To access there's an 8-foot door and a 10-foot door.
Okay, I appreciate that. And in the rare case that they're going to have to maybe change out large pieces of equipment, is there sufficient access space there to get that equipment in and out post-construction such that it wouldn't necessarily rip up all those bushes and plants?
Right. Yes, they've worked with landscape to get some resilient planting and ground cover without it, but also still allowing enough planting to block the space from the neighbors. That was a concern that they took into consideration.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to navigate this screen a little bit because I've now got people kind of popped up and it makes it a little bit easier, but it's still not perfect. I never thought I would miss the GoToMeeting thing. That was horrible, but that had some benefit. Anybody else just speak? I think I can see you all now. But all right, I don't think I see anybody else. I do want to talk to you all about 2 items that I kind of picked up on during the discussion last time, because I think they are related in a number of ways. The first is the TPAS issue, right? Oh geez, where'd you go? Okay, did somebody just stop sharing their screen? Is that what happened? Okay, that actually makes it much easier. Thank you, guys. So when you were before us, I think in 2022, we had a discussion on, I believe it was a requested relief from parking, and for staff and the applicant, tell me if my recollection on this is wrong. As a point of negotiation and discussion between you all and this board last year, because we gave you, I believe, a reduction in parking by a somewhat healthy number of spaces that you would otherwise be required to provide, you agreed at that meeting to be bound by a condition that would have required a 1-year TPAS and subscription to be given to residents. That wasn't something that we just decided to do just to be mean or fun or whatever. This was something that we did directly in relation to the requested relief that you sought for the parking that you would otherwise have been required to provide. And I understand the market has changed a little bit since last year, and things have mellowed out. Now there's a less than 15% chance of a recession instead of a 30% chance of recession, and all that good stuff, which is, I think, a benefit. So I do want to take into consideration that some of the lending issues and financing issues, have modified over the last year. But at the same time, I don't think 1 month is anything that this board was satisfied with as a temporary solution for a permanent condition for relief. So that's certainly not something that I'm satisfied with, is knocking it down to a month. I also don't necessarily know if we need to keep it at a year. I think there is somewhere in the middle that we can come to an agreement on, because of all of the reasons that I just mentioned. It was something that we talked about. It was something that was trying to mitigate relief that you sought, was to get people, if you weren't going to be providing vehicle spaces, that you would be incentivizing your tenants to use modes of transportation other than vehicles, because otherwise you'd have X number of extra cars potentially on the street. So that's kind of that's my concern. Part one is to have a discussion on that. Condition part two, and I'm not terribly concerned about your particular project because I don't think it's too dramatic, but I do want to raise the fact that in our discussion a year ago, the planning board, myself, and I believe Aaron Gino at the time were pretty clear that it's the city's intent to increase family-sized housing. And a reduction in the number of family-sized units of 3 bedrooms in favor of 1 and 2 bedrooms is somewhat contradictory to where the city has indicated that its policy preferences lie. And it flies in contravention to where I like to see developments go, particularly where we liked the fact that you had increased the number of larger units and larger bedroom units. Your comments in last meeting, I forget exactly who said it, somebody on the applicant team, I think acknowledged the fact that you make more money with 1 and 2 bedrooms than you do with 3 bedrooms. And that's nice for you, but that's not great for the policy of the city. You also indicated something like you can control more people instead of jamming people into 3 bedrooms. We'll have, lesser space. We just got rid of our 4 unrelated rule. And my concern a few weeks ago was that we can now jam more people into housing. So I think that's somewhat different from what that argument is trying to show. But the number of units and the number of bedrooms in your particular project, I don't think are that different for me to, vote no and really kind of stymie this because, things have changed and I understand that. But I do want to raise that point is I don't agree with reducing the unit size. We have far too many 1 bedrooms in the city. We have plenty of 2 bedrooms. We don't have nearly enough 3 bedrooms. And the fact that that's just going to help your bottom line is what you said 2 weeks ago. That's not terribly convincing to me, but the numbers on your particular project, I don't think move the needle on what's a citywide problem. But I'm not going to, hold you to modifying all of that. I am going to hold you to modifying the TPAS issue, and the modification issue, because that is something that you agreed to a year ago. Knowing fully well how much those things cost, right? That's not something that was a throwaway. That's not something that I think was something that wasn't significantly considered by this board. And I hope not by you as an applicant, is to take on a condition that you weren't sure how that was going to impact your project. But a year forward and market changes having occurred, I think we can have a discussion on where the appropriate number is. And I don't know what that is. I'm kind of thinking splitting the baby and making it 6 months, but I'd like to have a discussion between you and my fellow board members, because that is something that we had a discussion on and something that you agreed to.
Thank you, Chair Capuano. I think there's a lot of questions there, and I'm not sure that in my initial response I will get to all of them. So, and I have a feeling we'll want to stop and go back and forth on certain items. So certainly feel free to circle back if I don't touch on all the points in my first response. I think we can maybe start with the units question that you mentioned. The change in the 3 bedrooms, we understand that is something that the city is looking for more 3-bedroom units, and that the project is reducing those numbers. We'd say, however, that we are increasing the total number of units for this building, and that ultimately, as kind of we get to the discussion on the TPAS and the MBTA passes, that we think 84 units here is better than no units. And given really the very what we call the dire market conditions that we currently have, and the really challenging economic times in the past year and a half since the original approval, and which looks to continue to be an extremely challenging markets, debt and equity, that those concerns are real, and that having more units here, more units for the city, as noted in the staff report, that MAPC has noted that having more smaller units does take some pressure off of existing 3-bedroom units, that having more units here is a benefit as well. Turning to the 1-year bike and T-Pass.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna counter real fast. MAPC
Sure.
is a regional planning commission that speaks for far more than just Somerville. And in Somerville, I've been on this board now since 2008. We have built plenty of studios and 1-beds, more so than any other units that I know that we've built. We've also had multifamily homes, or even larger single-family homes, be converted into smaller units. So the MAPC, I think, is right in a regional sense, but it's certainly not correct in this particular community.
Chairman Capuano, if I might sort of add to what my colleague, Mr. Smith, was saying in response to that. I think taking a step back, perhaps, from where Jordan started, he noted, and I think everyone, of course, understands, at least to some extent, based on which area and which industry their professional practice takes them. But the commercial real estate markets, which of course includes multifamily housing, really has changed in an extraordinarily negative fashion in the last 12 to 18 months. As Jordan noted, it's not only the debt markets. Everyone talks about the debt interest rates. It is the ability to find any equity, not to mention that construction costs have gone up, generally speaking, 30 to 40%, depending on where you're building. And of course, there's labor costs as well, especially if you're building union build. And so the scenario that our client has found themselves in is, within just a couple months after the approval last year, which of course we very much appreciated, the equity that was then in the deal could no longer support the economics of it. And it took over a year to find any other investor willing to come in to bet on multifamily housing in Somerville. I'm sure it has not escaped any of you that there's not been a lot of multifamily housing anywhere. I mean, not just Somerville, not just Massachusetts, but it is extraordinarily complicated right now to make the numbers work. And I do think to what you noted, the way that it was articulated at the last meeting regarding making more money off of different units, not the best way to perhaps come at that item. We understand. I think a better way perhaps to talk about it is that this project, nor any project, can go forward if the costs exceed the returns. And so we're not talking about making a ton of money. We're talking about not losing money. And that is unfortunately simply where we are. We feel very lucky that we found a really good equity investor that's a known local multifamily developer and investor, and we just don't want to lose the project. And so when Jordan says it's the small increase number of units or zero, I really wish he was exaggerating, because we worked on this project for so many years, but he really isn't. And so I did just want to take a moment, and I'm done now, off my soapbox, but just really to express that, honestly, the instruction we have from our client, which is, through his investor, is this project cannot cost one more dollar or they're out. and so that is just where we are.
I just want to clarify and take a step back, Attorney Schultz. I'm not prepared to deny this project on that basis. It is something that I did want to raise for a point of discussion, though, because I was a little surprised by some of the commentary that was made a few weeks ago, and the concerns that were raised by my colleagues.
We fully understand. Thank you for the opportunity to respond.
Mm-hmm. And did I just see somebody's hand? Yes, Amelia.
Through you, Mr. Chair. to your point about everyone having their expertise and their roles and different, understandings of the market and different roles and responsibilities. Yeah, I will say, like, I work in commercial real estate. I understand very well how the market has changed in the last 18 months. At the same time, I'll say, as a member of this board, our job is not to relieve conditions until your project is economic again. Like, that is not at all the remit of the planning board. So we will assess this on its merits under the criteria that we are legally obligated to consider. And whether or not that pencils, I think I can speak for my colleagues in that we all want to see more housing get built in Somerville. But that's not to say that we will accept a project that does not meet the standards by which our board is held to do so, which I hope you can understand.
Yes, thank you. Member Aboff, we certainly do. And which is why in the supplemental submission that we made, a week and a half ago, perhaps, we agreed to the compromise position set forth by your professional planning staff and mobility department, where they believed that the appropriate data-driven TDM measure offset for any and all transportation impacts from this project would be either their original recommendation of the 1 month only passes, or the year-long passes only for the ADUs and the month-long for all others. And so we believe that their professional recommendation, assessment, and analysis, if you were to follow that, would be of course appropriate.
If I may respond, Mr. Chair, I accept that is where planning staff has landed now with an updated recommendation, and I'm not prepared to argue that point, but I would like to continue pushing back on your characterization that 1 month was the original recommendation, because I've read it a number of times and I'm fairly confident that the recommendation originally was 1 month, but more would be preferred, or something along those lines. So I don't think that 1 month was ever really planning staff's original intention in their recommendation. Thank you.
Let's continue going on that. I think I'm at a point, at least for me, because I do remember that original recommendation, because that was, I thought, when we discussed it a year ago, a pretty light I'm going to say a pretty light giveaway for a permanent reduction in parking spaces, which is why this board was encouraged by the staff's original memorandum and recommendation to push for more. And I also understand that the market has changed, and your particular financial situation has changed since then. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not wedded to the 12-month requirement, because we're kind of looking at a major amendment, right? We're looking at things not completely anew, but with different and fresher eyes. But as one member, I want to see more than a month. I think that is, particularly if we're not, or if I'm not pushing back on the changing unit mix, right? Like, there's only so much that I think we and me want to walk back on from what we discussed 12 months ago. You get 84 units at about $90 a pop. You're talking less than $100,000 if we were to go for the 12 months. I don't know where that squares with your finances, but I'm looking at something more along the lines of a 6-month requirement to give you a little bit of relief, but also not completely step away from where this board thought was an important compromise to make. And I don't know where you are all on that. And before you agree to a condition, I encourage you to look at the math.
Mr. Chairman, if I might. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if it's, I did see a hand, so.
I just saw Michael's hand, so I'd like to recognize him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I'll wait for my question after the applicant's response.
Thank you. Apologies for the interruption. So to that, I think there's 2 points that are important to make. One, sort of a bigger picture answer. The first is, the expectation of consistency and reliance on similarly situated projects and precedents. And something that we laid out in our supplemental written submission a week and a half ago was looking at all of the other few multifamily projects that have been approved in the same period of time under which we have been under consideration. And of those projects, each of which share a very similar, if not identical, parking ratio to ours, none of those projects were burdened with an MBTA pass, Blue Bike pass, TDM type measure that was equivalent to the $100,000 a year on potential repeat if leases turn over every year, with two tenants, up to two tenants per unit, as we were. Instead, the TDM measures through the conditions of the planning board that were put on those projects were equivalent to the 1 month pass, each MBTA and Blue Bike pass only. And so I think one question that we would posit back to the board would be, what is it about our project that justifies a 12-fold increase in the TDM burden when it is intended to mitigate against the exact same level of traffic impact?
So historically, we have imposed similar things, and I don't know how many particular projects you're referring to, but the planning board obviously deals with many, many more projects than are those that are exactly similarly situated as yours. And we have a pretty lengthy history of including this condition for projects that are both closer to transit, further from transit, and things like that. The planning board also isn't bound by precedent. We do look at projects as they come, and take every application as its own individual project while using guidance on others. We also recognize that every project is different. We also recognize that this is something that you originally agreed to. So using that as a baseline, I look at it and I say, I think we can get to an agreement here. I don't want to shut this project down, but at the same time, I think when we look at some of the other factors that we've already taken into consideration into this major amendment, that we're trying to do you a favor and trying to come to a negotiation here and trying to figure out what actually works for you. Because we already have a condition that was a binding condition agreed to by the applicant that said 12. We can deny the major amendment and go back to the original permit. I don't think that's where anybody wants to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Respectfully, speaking with authority from the ownership team, anything beyond the recommendation of staff, we will withdraw our application with prejudice and will not be able to proceed with the project. That is simply the reality of the numbers, whether everyone believes us or doesn't. That is, we'll have to abandon the project and the site.
How is there nothing else that you can make work on a site that is only going to appreciate in value with the increased rental, value over the next? I mean, rents are going up all the time. You'll be able to make this back. You're right near a transit location. I don't get it. The project's been in the ownership for how many years, and it hasn't been developed?
Several years. We've had to face two, we would say frivolous abutter lawsuits, both of which have been defeated and finally, as of just about a month ago, gone away. So expenses there, all of the carrying costs, the 30 to 40% increase in overall costs of the project. This is just where we are. We really want to proceed and build this project, but the margins are so extraordinarily tight. All indicators from the capital markets is that debt is going to increase in rate, in commercial rate. I can't speak to residential, individual single family home mortgages, but this is just where we are. I wish we weren't. I really wish we weren't, but I am speaking, I'm not a financial analyst, so I can't speak to that.
I'd like to have some discussion by and between my colleagues here, because this is something that was certainly raised by us a number of times and is a concern to me. I certainly don't want to kill this project, but at the same time, I feel like we're being put in a position where we might have to, and that's a bad thing. So I'd like to hear from my colleagues on where we are on this. I saw Amelia first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that part of the applicant's hesitation is likely this condition exists in perpetuity, and I wonder if we might be able to reach common ground by considering a version of this that might decrease or sunset over some amount of time, or whether it is the upfront costs in the first few years before stabilization that the applicant is more worried about, whether it might be something that could kick in after a certain amount of time, in case there were any common ground that could be found through thinking more flexibly about timeframes.
I think it's not a bad idea, Amelia. We have had projects in the past that have had conditions that require the applicant or in different projects to make a report back to the planning board after a period of time. And that might not be a bad way to go in this situation, is to have an opportunity to take a look at where you are in 12 or 24 months after you've opened and started taking tenancy, and evaluate whether it makes sense for the planning board to be able to amend that condition. It's something that we've done in the past, not too frequently, but it is something that we have done, because we understand that particularly when applications get off the ground, things can be certainly shakier than after they've stabilized a bit. I think that's a very good thing to be able to consider, because we're in this position where we don't want to kill your application, but we also feel fairly strongly that this is a policy and mitigation practice that we do care about as a body. So, Amelia, did you have anything else that you wanted to? Michael, did you want to say something? Questions?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. So first off, I would say that I would be supportive of Vice Chair Avoff's recommendation. I think that's another good way of looking at the problem. I think from a style point, permits don't have like a most favored nation clause in them, and in a lot of ways we wouldn't look at this in the opposite lens, such that if for some reason there was a stricter policy, we claw back provisions that we approved in the past. So I personally struggle with kind of giving in on things that we previously agreed to. But again, as you've highlighted, Mr. Chair, that the market has changed dramatically, and we obviously want this housing to be built. Just looking at this problem a little bit from another angle, I wonder if the applicant has any other potential creative solutions to benefits that they could produce for the community that may not have the same financial drag on the project. Like, instead of having the full year of bikes, are there any other transportation solutions or other forms of community values that you can create? Maybe hosting workspaces for creative arts or things like that may cost you less, but are things that are readily available to you as a landowner. Are there any thoughts on this that you might be able to kind of offer to the table as well?
And this is also not something that I think, because Michael just kind of asked you a question that, what else are you willing to commit to? This might be something that you would want to discuss, by and between yourselves, and we can reconvene in a different meeting to have a more thoughtful discussion on that proposal, which I think is not a bad one at all.
Sorry, I don't think Jen and I knew who was going to speak there first. Sorry for the delay. We'd sort of had the discussions, obviously, with planning, including mobility, and to come up with their recommendations for the compromise of the ADUs, and so at this moment we aren't sort of able to come up on the fly. We don't think that would be necessarily the best way to do that. We sort of obviously work that through with mobility as the compromise solution. And so at this point, I think we would have to go back and see if there's another solution that, again, does not have the same financial ramifications, that we would then be able to come back before this board to have a discussion with that more fully.
And to what Councillor McNeely noted, or Member McNeely,
You've promoted him.
as you noted, it would have to be something creative. We did in fact have the Sampson splitting the baby discussion, and anticipating this meeting, and we're told definitively by the financial analysts that work for the investor, no, that those are not numbers that work. And so we would have to go back and have them figure out if there is anything creative yet less costly that is possible. And so I think if that is where we are, we could request a continuation until the December 21st hearing, and see if our client and his investor have anything they can come up with.
Michael, did you have anything you want to add? I'm sorry. I think that's a great idea, because I think we on the board, based on kind of, certainly where I'm at and where I think I've heard my colleagues are at, is that we want to get to a place where we can get to a more confident yes. And I think that's a good way to do it, is let's have we don't want to kill this project. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we have a healthy understanding of how some of this mitigation is going to be handled. And I think both of the suggestions raised by my colleagues are very, very good. So I think the two things that we'll be looking for in a few weeks, part one is, outside of the TPAS and financial commitment, that we might be giving some relief on, based on a previously agreed to condition, kind of what other community benefits is reasonable to to provide. And I think part two is an analysis on, let's say we give you the 1 month TPASs. At what point is a reasonable time for you to be able to represent to staff and to the planning board kind of where your numbers lie, such that we can make a reevaluation? And I don't know if 12 months is an appropriate time, or if it's 24 months. I rely on you all in the profession and with your own financial analysts.
Sorry, Chair Capuano, if I may just ask for a bit of a clarification on that last point about reevaluating. You mentioned on the 1 month TPAS. Could you just explain a bit further?
Yeah, sure. So my original thought, and I think this is where Amelia was, and I don't want to speak for her, but I think this is where she was coming from, and at least this is kind of where I am too, is the original condition that was approved by the planning board last year said you were going to give TPASs for 12 months, right? And now you're saying I want 1 month because I can't make it work. And the concern that we have is, well, you might be able to make it work after a period of time, because that's kind of where the board's preference and priorities are based on some of the mitigation that we've given you for other things. So the thought is, if we were to move forward with an approval with conditions on this major amendment, I envision the condition to look something like the applicant will provide, 1 month of, TPASs for a period of, and this is where I'm looking for your input, X number of months, 12 months, 48 months, whatever it's going to be, and in 48 months or whatever it might be, they shall come back to the planning board and make a report on whether it's financially feasible to move forward. Because this is not something that I think the planning board is willing to give up on, but we are willing to give some temporary relief so that you can get your feet under you.
Thank you
very
for
much.
the clarification. I think we understand. I did just want to offer a clarification of my own, just to make sure that we are all speaking the same language. We already tonight, would and have agreed to the 1 year pass provision for all affordable units on repeat at the turnover of leases, but 1 month only for all other units. And that is the updated recommendation of mobility and planning staff. And so I did just want to clarify that it is, and Jordan can help me out here on the number of affordable units, because I know I'm going to say it wrong. 16. There we go. And so I did just want to clarify that is where we are right now. Oh,
okay. I appreciate that.
Perhaps.
I do. I appreciate that clarification, because that's not. Yep, that's very good to hear. So I appreciate that. So yes, it would be a reevaluation within a time defined, to make a report to the planning board with kind of I wouldn't say it's an open-ended condition, but it's a condition subject to revision based on data provided to the planning board sometime in the future after you've kind of begun operation.
And the only addition I suppose I would make is, I can't imagine any developer client of mine being prepared to open their books in a public hearing on financial performance. So we would have to work together to find a way where any return, if this is a road that our client is willing to take, to address that in the future. And so I'm not trying to be challenging.
I get it.
Okay.
I get it. And I
okay. I don't want to get yelled at by my client tonight.
It actually hasn't been for a while since we've had kind of an open-ended condition like this. This was at least pre-pandemic that I can remember. And I don't remember whether it had to do with oh, you know what? No, I'll tell you exactly what it had to do with. It generally had to do with the way certain businesses, and they were cannabis related businesses, operated based on appointment-based schedules and simply walk-ins based on concerns of the neighborhood and loitering conditions and things like that. That was the last one that I remember, but I know there have been more. So we've definitely had conditions where we've had the applicant revisit certain issues and conditions that we've imposed. And the way this particular one will potentially operate, if this is something that becomes the condition, we can figure it out then, whether it's going to be a discussion with staff outside of a public hearing on the financial feasibility of extension or not. I don't know if that's exactly the way it's going to go, but I can see the understanding of and the concern of your clients.
Thank you.
Yeah, Amelia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify, since I raised this sort of changing over time concept, certainly revisiting something after an amount of time to understand whether an increase is viable is one way to go about that. I'm pretty sure this board is empowered to go into executive session, although I can't think of a time when we have to protect that kind of information.
I've gone into executive session once in 2010.
There we go. But I also would anticipate from the developer's perspective that it may be difficult to agree to a condition that sort of could ramp up in the future without a sense of what that ramp up would look like. And so the way I'd actually originally been thinking about it was, perhaps this is a condition where we can agree that for the first round of tenants in the building, you will provide 6 months And for the subsequent tenancy, you'll provide 5 months or something that would then taper down over time. And I have no idea whether a solution like that would be acceptable to my fellow board members. But something that tapers down rather than something that starts low but can be reopened to an open-ended question. I just want to be clear that that was one other thing that might be worth considering, because I can imagine it being easier to assess.
So Amelia, I think, and I'm not going to speak for the applicant. I think that's the reverse of where we were talking about, is to start high and go low. Because I think the intent was to maximize the number of months for market rate tenants and not minimize them. Am I mishearing what you're saying?
Mr. Chair, I'm trying to get to a solution where for at least some I would prefer your way, but I think it may be less feasible for an investor to agree to. So I'm just trying to think of whether there is any other structure that might be easier for everyone to get to yes on. And I don't really want it to taper down beyond a certain threshold.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just trying to think of the full set of conversations that are happening.
Sure. So I do see Andrew's hand raised, but I want to bring one thing in before I ask him to join. I don't know if this meeting is the right time to kind of hash out all of these hypotheticals. So I think it might make more sense for the applicant to convene with their full team and their finance team and all that, to be able to come back to us and say, on Mike's proposal of the condition to revisit in some capacity in 2 years, can we make that work, and in what capacity? If we can't, perhaps the applicant can come up with another creative solution that they can present to staff and to the board during the next time we meet, to be able to get to that place. So, Andrew, can I get you?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I won't be long, but I just wanted to clarify a few things from the current staff memo for this major amendment in terms of recommendations related to the transit passes, which has been discussed tonight. That was all from mobility in obviously the conversations with us, but they definitely led those conversations. And I will also call out that in the previous project, staff did recommend what was conditioned ultimately. I just want to make sure that that's clear. That is correct, what staff recommended at the time, if the board, of course, chose to go that route, which you all did. So now here we are today. And I want to just be clear that, and if this wasn't clear in the staff memo, I apologize, that mobility staff are agnostic to the decision the board makes. They just wanted to provide some recommendations, and there's 2 recommendations. One was you would just eliminate the previous conditions and just have the MMP dictate what those conditions are related to the TDM measures with the passes, or what the applicant is provided with, just those 1-year passes being provided to only the ADUs and not the market rate units. But again, it wasn't like one recommendation was what staff wanted, it was just options. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear. We are, of course, going to make sure that we operate with the, what at your discretion, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the board of how you decide. I just wanted to make sure that staff stance was clear. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate that, Andrew. Thank you. Does anybody want to say anything before we encourage the applicant to reconvene amongst themselves and come up with some helpful solutions? I see Luke's hand.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just since it seems like we'll be going off and the applicant team will be thinking, another variable that's occurred to me in all of this is, if I'm tracking the current language correctly, it's giving both a Blue Bikes pass and an MBTA pass simultaneously to everybody. I get that the MBTA pass is the far costlier of those two, but and I don't know how this has been done across other projects in the past in Somerville, but is it always pairing both of them no matter what, or is that just another variable of flexibility and thinking about reducing costs but still providing alternate mobility options to folks?
Luke, in my memory, it's been a mix of both. Sometimes we've done blue bikes, sometimes we've done just T passes, sometimes we've done both. But based on kind of where we are with with kind of enhanced transit, I'm more inclined to a T pass. I'll tell you, I wouldn't, if I was living there, I would do the T pass and not a blue bike, because it's already well served by by bus lines and access to to rail transit. But so I think we're in a place, and if the applicant team can tell me if they disagree, where I think it's in everybody's interest to continue this so that you can have some discussions between yourselves to be able to make a report and maybe some additional suggestions to the planning board, by and through staff at the next meeting or the first meeting in January or something.
Yes, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I actually think this was a really helpful discussion to be able to work some of these issues out. That's kind of I think the benefit of having an applicant who's willing to have these types of discussions to come up with a creative solution to meet the concerns of the board, but also meeting the needs of what we think is an important project that we'd like to ultimately see go forward if that's the best thing for the neighborhood and the city. So
Thank you
with
for your
that,
time.
thank you. Do you want to continue us to the 21st or the I think it's the 5th? Because I think the 21st is going to be a pretty busy meeting as well, because we'll have the land use committee stuff that we've got to discuss. I'm sorry, not the 5th, the January 4th, I think, is our first meeting of the new year.
We would prefer the 21st if you will hear us. I'm out of the country at the beginning of January, but that's selfish reasons.
I was gone in November, so I get it. All right, let's see if we can take you up again on the 21st with some good ideas. And we'll see where we are, and if we're in a place where we can move forward on the 21st, I will, to the best of my ability, try to take you first.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the time this evening.
Anybody else on the board have anything they'd like to add? Okay. Seeing none, the chair moves to continue 28 to 44 Broadway to the 21st. Seconded by Amelia. Steve, can you please call the roll?
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Deborah Howitt Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
And Michael Capuano.
Aye. This agenda item is continued. Give me a moment to combobulate my documents. The exact wrong thing. What we have left is 45 Mystic Avenue and 2 to 4 Alpine. I think it makes sense, honestly, to go with Alpine at this time, because I'd like to at least get the presentation in. I tend to think the discussion on this won't be crazy extensive, and so we might be able to get this one to a point where if it's fairly straightforward and not terribly controversial, we might be able to take this one up and close it out in 2 weeks. But we'll see where we go. What I'd like to do is invite the applicant at 2 to 4 Alpine to be unmuted and screen shared and all sorts of good stuff.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Through the chair to Ann Vigorito, I'm going to make you a panelist, and you'll just have to briefly leave the meeting and come back in to come back as a panelist. And if you'd like to share screen, I can make you a co-host, which will give you screen sharing privileges. Also see Philip Sima has also raised his hand. We'll make him a panelist as well.
Yes, I would. Thank you, Andrew Berminski. This is Attorney Ann Vigorito. Philip Sima will be the one sharing his screen as he's the architect. And I do think, and echoing what Chairman Capuano said, I do think, our presentation is thorough and brief, and I'm hoping we can get this in less than an hour. That's my goal. So if it's okay, I'd like to begin.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, members of the planning board, Chairman Capuano, Attorney Ann Vigorito, 424 Broadway, Somerville. Here this evening regarding 2-4 Alpine LLC. Alon Sassoon is also here this evening. He is one of the managers of the LLC. And as I've stated, Philip Sima of Balance Architects is here as our architect. And we also have our landscaping team as well. So the proposal, this is in an MR4 district. It's to construct a 4-story general building. This is Alpine Street, just to give you a visual. It sits right on the bike path. We have been so excited for this project. So we've been waiting for this moment for a long time. It's 26 residential units. The first level will be a commercial space, a little under 1,400 square feet. The goal here is we'd like to get a restaurant in there just because of the vibrancy of the bike path. Also, 26 of those units, 5 will be affordable. There'll be no motor vehicle parking. We're within a half mile of a transit area. There will be 30 long-term, 8 short-term bicycle parking. And Ward 5 Councilor Beatrix Gomez Mahad was very supportive throughout this process. I'm assuming you've seen the staff report, and our last neighborhood meeting was back in March of 2022, March 23rd to be exact, and our first had been October 1st of 21. There were concerns with the neighborhood. Our team worked through them, the construction impacts and some of the parking issues. So our team really came together and we made it work. And as far we haven't heard anything since, and we worked with the neighborhood, but they were very, very supportive of this project.
And do you mind if I, Attorney Vigorito, can I just ask you?
Sure.
So the last neighborhood meeting was March of 22.
Yes, March 23rd.
Yep, we're coming up on January of 24, which close to 2 years. Can you tell me kind of what the last substantive engagement with the neighborhood was? Was it after March of 22, or has it been more recent in a less formal setting, discussions with the ward council or anything like that?
Well, the counselor was made aware of, some of the changes that were occurring, because after that meeting, there were some, questions and or concerns. It's like a better word. And, as far as, we removed, there was parking that was removed from the basement level. They had concerns about construction. So, the team assured them that, it would be within, of course, just the allotted hours. The neighborhood obviously was made aware of any of those changes, I believe, through the Ward 5 counselor. And, every neighborhood meeting, I'm there. They have all of my information. So I always urge them, please call my office and, there will be a response. They were very happy with, what was going on. So we haven't heard anything negative. Like I said, I've been on this project for over 2 years. So, I've been very in tune to it. And, I think if anything, and I'll be quite frank, they're all like, when is this going to happen? When is this, project going to happen? So That's been my understanding. Alon Sassoon, who is one of the managers of this LLC, he's always very, very embroiled, working with the neighborhood. So they know who he is, and, with questions, concerns, they would have reached out. I'm being very honest, we haven't heard anything. So without further ado, I'm going to mute myself and hand it off to Phil Seaman to go through the plans.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. Nice to see everyone again. So as Anne said, we are on the corner of Alpine and Cedar Street. This is a perspective. You can see the community path right here. So great opportunity to have a residential building, especially along the bike path. Just give some context to let everybody know what the existing neighborhood is like. So the dash red line represents the existing site. So there's a 2-story masonry building there with open surface parking. And then adjacent structures kind of vary. So we are abutting a residential building, but as well the bike path, and then kind of some larger multifamily developments on either side of the corner. You can see in all of these images from the street view as well. So a really nice mix of housing types and building forms. So the existing site has 3 curb cuts. As Anne said, we've removed vehicular parking from the project. So those are all going away, which is quite a benefit for the streetscape. Again, just the assessor's map looking at basically the lot dimensions here, and then the community bike path. So the ground floor architectural site plan, as Anne mentioned, we want to have a large, or well, maybe not large, but a restaurant space on the corner. This is a pedestrian street, so we are required by zoning to have that type of use down there. We want to take advantage as much as possible with the visibility between the bike path and this space. So we have large kind of accordion fold-out windows along this bike path. Both Elon and myself have worked on another similar restaurant in Union Square, Juliet. So we're imagining these similar type of restaurant windows rather for the restaurant, which are a great amenity. So the main entrance to the restaurant is right on Cedar Street. The residential entry is all the way back kind of on the other side on Alpine Street. What's really nice is we have a landscape buffer because of this residential zone right here. So there's great access for a large bike room. The bike parking actually exceeds the required amount that can be accessed off of this path over here. 3 residential units. This one's a very lucky unit that gets to face right on the bike path with 2 bedrooms, and then 1 bedroom and 1 bedroom over here. So the building is impermeable, but we do have lots of permeable pavers and landscape features on the site. So again, we're an MR4 building in a mix of UR, but there are that 1 NR abutting us. So that causes some form changes in our building. You can see we're within the transit zone, and there is that pedestrian street. So we are having a kind of restaurant commercial use there. I won't go through any of these. We've reviewed this all with Matt Sarcione in great detail. And will not go through FAR calcs, but what we will get into, we used to have a basement, we don't anymore. So this is just a slab on grade foundation. We reviewed a lot of this. So about 1,400 square feet for the restaurant area. And then there's more detail on that bike room. So 30 bikes in total. We have 26 units as well. We have short-term bike parking along the street. So this is very bike-friendly building.
On
Sure.
Can I just interrupt? Just for my own kind of imagination of what this site would look like, what is a 1,400 square foot restaurant? Is that more of a cafe or more of a larger restaurant? I just don't know what kind of space we're looking at. I don't know what 1,400 square feet means
so
restaurant.
Yeah, Juliet in Union Square is probably like 1,800 square feet. So we've done kind of fit outs, but you have to fit a kitchen, you have to fit some bathrooms. So I mean, we were envisioning a kind of a bar style around here perhaps, and then more of a sit down seating in this area with a potential bar along the window here, so you could be facing out. So 20, 30 seats max kind of is what we're looking at.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I actually think it's a great idea because that area is kind of so underserved when it comes to restaurant uses.
And so as we get upstairs, this second floor is primarily all 1 bedrooms with a studio in there. Each unit has a balcony for it. Well, there also is a common, not every unit has a balcony on this floor, but there are several balconies along the street side and the bike path side. There are common roof access decks on the top floor as well. As we get into the 3rd floor, we introduce a 2-bedroom at the end of the building here, and then all 1 bedrooms after this. When we get to that 4th level, we get some interesting geometry, the step back that is required because of our proximity to the residential building here. So we have the ability to kind of create some nice little roof decks, a very small roof deck over here, but it's still set back. It provides enough kind of screening from the residential building. And then we get a really nice common roof deck on the top that faces the bike path that we're going to have a green roof on that is required as part of our green score to kind of hit that level. We have a small mechanical penthouse that's going to deal with hot water, which is common for the building. Some of our mini splits and ERVs, because again, we're going for that net zero ready unit density bonus. So this via the Passive House certification path. So that is what this building, it's a very green building. And then these are some photovoltaic panels that we'd be putting, this is the south side of the building. I'm not going to get into this, but basically just the illumination levels of exterior lights, which was one of the requirements for the application, but a little bit more interesting are the elevations. So this is the elevation along Cedar Street, the commercial entry right here. So lots of glazing. We want it to be very visible on the ground floor and kind of, we're using this residential bay above to create a strong, basically weight at this commercial entry. And then this is the entry along the landscape buffer. So this is the trash room and the bike room. I'm realizing this bike room probably shouldn't be a glass door because people are going to ding it up pretty hard, but a change in material, and then this is the access over here. And you're seeing that roof deck happening on the 4th floor as well up here. So the main elevation on Alpine, as we said, the residential entry is pushed all the way to one side of the building. We're using, we have an overhang at the site, and we're going to have vegetation. This time, no plastic plants. We learned our lesson hard on that from 59 Bow Street, but we're showing a trellis for this vegetation up here, and we would have it be irrigated. Some small planting, these would be movable planters for some privacy for the residential units that are on the ground floor. And then the restaurant, I believe, starts about here on the footprint. And you're seeing some of those larger balconies. So this is the side facing the bike path. Lots of great access for balconies here, the common roof deck. This is that kind of accordion style window that we're looking at here. This is just a means of egress. I will pass on this zoning requirement for the fenestration, but so here's what you're seeing. So it's a mix of kind of dark materials, light materials, and wood look materials. So a darker fiber cement panel, kind of a medium density, so not like a hardy, but a nicer panel, as well as a white fiber cement panel for some of these bays. And then a phenolic resin wood look on the base, which is very durable, but keeps that wood look along it. So plenty of fenestration along all the windows, or all the facades rather. This is the really nice view along the bike path. You're getting those large windows there. That's that wood look. More of these opportunities for planting that kind of relate to the natural landscape that is already there. That's the commercial entry. A little bit more detail over here of what that could look like. And then so you're seeing this same facade material carry up to the soffit as well. That would be through that nice little accordion window. Again, similar view. And then kind of that facade along Alpine Street when at lower light levels. And then really the great view, it's a big building, but with the vegetation that's there, we think it's really going to kind of feel at home and match some of the other buildings that are on the other side. And kind of be complementary to this feeling of this linear path. And so these are just the facade materials that we're looking at, right? Like a white brick, the oak paneling. There's some concrete base, some bronze metal trim, and a charcoal fiber cement panel. So I think I'll leave it on this image as the last slide and open it up to any questions, comments, etc.
Great, thank you very much. I'm gonna change my view because I don't see everybody. I think I see more of you now. Okay. Does anybody have any comments or questions of the applicant or of staff? I see Amelia's hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarifying question. I think my eyes are playing tricks on me a little bit, and I'm having trouble distinguishing in the renderings between what is intended to be the sort of charcoal colored fiber cement panel and what is intended to be the bronze metal. If you wouldn't mind just pointing out what those are in a couple of views, I would really appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, I think so all the trim on the roof and basically along the top, that would be this bronze metal fascia. So basically it happens at those areas as well as this consistent linear kind of between the first and second floor. So you can kind of see that in these renderings here and here.
Got it, but
So,
the main material that we're seeing on the corner there is the charcoal colored fiber cement.
correct. Yeah, this is charcoal fiber cement.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I saw your lips moving. Did you call on me by chance? I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, I did see your hand. So yes, Michael, please.
Thank you. Appreciate it. At a high level, I think this is a really great project. I frequent this area, and I think you're right. It's consistent with the rest of the neighborhood, at least right there by the path. So first off, I think it's a good project. I would be remiss if I wasn't a little bit of a stickler on the sustainability front. As I kind of went through some of the documentation and compared it to the drawings I saw, could you just maybe quickly run through your strategy around sustainability here, confirming A, that you intend to install solar panels, and B, that you will be using some natural gas for hot water heating, but that all other load is intended to be electric?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not the Passive House consultant for the project, but and I know like we are going with the FIAS, so the Passive House US model, but I think under the basically the certification model that we're going with, that it is a requirement to provide on-site PV, so that's certainly part of our objectives. Again, there would be no gas for anything within any of the residential units. We would have common hot water. Now, right now, it's more efficient to make that gas. Energy codes have also changed. So like by the time we actually go to permitting, this actually might become a full heat pump water-based, electrical-based water system. So also for the restaurant use, sometimes that gets excluded from the Passive House envelope, but I think the intent is net zero building, green as possible, high performance windows, high performance insulation, like low air changes, and then getting as electric as possible. And I know that even if we do have gas, it needs to be able to change to electric, so the capacity would be there for the future.
That last part was perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for, is that there is the ability to upgrade in the future, because obviously there's a lot of restrictions in the power grid here. So thank you for looking into that.
Anybody else? I'm going to reserve my comments until after the public testimony. But does anybody else have any comments or questions that they'd like to bring up before I open it up? So my little scroll. Okay, seeing none, what I'd like to do is open up this public hearing for oral testimony. I'd like to invite anybody that wants to speak in support of this application to please click the little raised hand button, and I'll call on you in the order in which I see you. Right now I see Scott Nowakowski.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Through the chair to Scott Nowakowski, I'm going to unmute you. You may need to unmute on your end.
And just a reminder for anybody that's going to provide testimony, please just give your name and address for the record.
Hi, okay, thank you. I'm Scott Nowakowski, 49 Morrison Ave. So pretty close by, but not a butter or anything. Yeah, I think it looks great. I'm excited, especially excited to have more amenities in the neighborhood, like the restaurant space. You know, like Davis Square and Ball Square are not too far, but you know, it's nice to have closer things nearby. And yeah, love to see more of this in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that wants to testify in support of the application, please raise your hand. Going once. Oh, I see Tori Antonino. If Tori can please be unmuted.
Through the chair, I have unmuted Tori Antonino.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tori Antonino. I live at 65 Boston Street. Ilan has done a lot of development in Union Square, so sort of stay on top of the developments that he's a part of. So usually, and hello, Ilan, if you're in the audience, usually the playbook is 1 bedrooms and studios. And so in general, I would just say, you know, if the applicant could provide a few more 2 bedrooms, that'd be appreciated, especially if they're the affordable dwelling units. You know, he is becoming a master developer with all the projects that he is accumulating, and I do hope at some point there is some sort of community benefits negotiation. But in the moment, my sort of small asks are, of course, using indigenous plants. If someone can write this down on his team, you want to use a coral honeysuckle, Lonicera sempervirens, for that vegetative climbing structure. And if you can, on your roof, if you would consider doing biosolar where the solar is. This evening, the city council did pass the vegetative roof ordinance, and I think you hit it, but it would be a show of good faith if you would add a biosolar, which is vegetation under the solar panels that you are providing. Okay, thank you very much, and let's talk soon, Ilan. Okay, bye.
Chair Capuano, this is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. I believe you may be muted.
I am. I'm trying not to annoy everybody, so I'm trying to mute myself and then forgetting to take myself off. Sorry. After 3 years, you would think I would know what I was doing with Zoom calls. If anybody else wants to speak in support of the application, please raise your hand. Going once, going twice. Seeing none, I'm closing that portion of the public hearing. I'll open it up to anybody that wants to speak in opposition to the application or otherwise express concern. Please raise your hand. Okay. Once, twice. Closing that portion of the public hearing, having seen no one. Resume discussion by the planning board. So I know my colleagues have expressed some thoughts. I would also like to express mine now. I think generally it's a very good project. I think it looks nice. I appreciate particularly from this vantage point, I appreciate the green wall that you've got going. I think it looks very nice. I like the green roof. I like the the move towards full electric and maximizing your sustainability on this project. I think it's a great idea. I love the idea that it's going to be a potentially a restaurant here. Like I said, I think this is an underserved area for restaurants, and the gentleman who provided testimony earlier, kind of confirmed that. So I think it's a great idea of a project. My question is, and I know it's in the materials, but I'm hoping you might be able to just give me a quick rundown now on the unit mix, and specifically what the unit mix will look like for market rate versus inclusionary units.
I do not have that. Maybe Anne. I don't know if you have the exact inclusionary units. I only know the kind of the unit, 1-bedroom studio, 2-bedroom makeup.
Yeah, so Attorney Ann Vigorito again. There's a mixture. There is, and I thought, there, as I stated earlier, there's 5 units that will be affordable. And I'm looking through my file to see if I can get that out in front of me, but there will be a mixture of, what we have here, some 2-beds, some 1-beds, and they're scattered through the building because, some of the requirements of the housing division is that units, and none of the affordable can touch. So, I know there's some on each floor, and I can always email that over to Chairman Capuano, because my file has become quite thick and I don't know those units off the top of my head, but I do recall that, of course, there's a mixture spread throughout the building.
Yeah, for the purpose of, because I'll be leaving the written comment open.
Okay.
But for the purpose of you guys being able to get us some of that material.
I can forward the actual AHIP to the board. I don't have my camera on, but if you saw how fast it was, you would be frightened. And I know there had been some changes, but I will get that over first thing tomorrow.
Appreciate that. Other than that, I think the project's great. I love the greenery that you're incorporating. I love the idea that you've got a green roof component. I think the rooftop private decks are a great way to incorporate some of that step back, and I'm very pleased with this project. So does anybody else have any comments or questions before we move forward? I see Amelia's hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add to your compliments of the project. This feels like maybe the most we've seen of like the zoning worked exactly the way it was supposed to, and as did the UDC, and I really appreciate that.
Right. So, you know what? I'm pretty satisfied with this. Debbie, I'm sorry. I see your hand.
Sorry, I was waving. Maybe the little hand thing maybe works a little bit better.
I think it's just the way that I have this view, and I need to figure out how to change it.
No worries. Yeah, I generally really enjoy this project, and I run by this lot daily, so you'll enjoy seeing it come up. But to follow up on Tori's kind of point and the idea, the city has wanted to see more family size housing. Just curious to hear how the decision came about in terms of the mix of unit sizes. It looks like there's 2 bedrooms, the rest are primarily 1-bedrooms, and then I think there were a handful of studios in there. So just curious to hear more about if there was any thought to having more 2 bedrooms or 1 or 2 threes, or kind of how you came to the sizes that you came to.
The developer Ilan Sassoon has asked to be unmuted if it's possible. He's on here because he can best speak to it. But we do have 3 2-bedroom units that kind of are really some of the best units. One is that 2-bedroom unit facing the bike path, and the other 2 are these ones that basically have 3 facades with full fenestration. But I think he's the best to talk about the exact way that we came up with this number and sizing it. And I know that you know, at one point the restaurant was a little larger and it just didn't, for kind of his performance to work, especially after removing the parking, we landed on a certain distribution of residential and commercial. But was he able to be unmuted?
This is Steve Carey in the planning division. I have now unmuted Alon, Mr. Sassoon. You may just need to unmute on your end.
Hi, members of the board.
Hello.
Mr. Chairman, how are you? Members of the board?
Doing
Thank you
well.
for having me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Excellent. So originally we did have, I believe, more 3-bedroom units. and-
Alon, before you start, just for the record, just name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Elon Sassoon, 2-4 Alpine Street, Somerville.
Thank you.
So we originally, you know, because I've listened so many years about having more 3-bedroom units, and so we had a large underground parking garage and we had some larger units, and the water table was so incredibly high in this area that we had to remove the entire underground parking. And that was one of the reasons why it took 2.5 to 3 years to come see you. So we settled on this unit mix. We also wanted to put outdoor seating on that grassy area outside the restaurant, which would have been a nice, beautiful touch, but that's owned by the MBTA, and we have an agreement with them, to a licensing agreement, and it didn't include outdoor seating, but something I'm still going to continue to try to work on because I think it would be lovely. But yeah, well, that was one of the reasons. So because we didn't have the parking, the 3-bedroom units make it very difficult. And I have to tell you, just from what's happening in today's market that I've seen, is it's the rentals for the ones and the studios go very quickly. The 2-bedroom units are taking a long time, and the 3-bedroom units are really taking a very long time to rent. And so I don't know, that's just my observation in the market.
I appreciate your insight and your comments. I'm pretty certain it's in the conditions, but because we're not putting any on-site parking on this property, I presume staff that we're including the standard condition of residential stickers.
This is Steve Carey in the planning division. I would defer to Wendy Chekowitz, who was the staff planner for this.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. If I remember correctly, it conditioned everything that mobility requested as condition, which I believe is a standard, that is one of the standard conditions in there, but let me check one more time.
And for the purpose of the record and clarity, the condition that I'm referring to is the one that says if we're not providing parking on site, that the residents do not get resident stickers or gas passes, but that with the understandable exclusion pursuant to state law that folks in the inclusionary units can request a waiver of that.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is included in the staff memo condition.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I don't know if we have any further discussion that we'd like to have on this application at this time.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I see. Oh, sorry, Amelia.
My apologies. I did have one item that I think merits discussion. I apologize. I had forgotten about it earlier. I believe there was a condition or a note in the staff memorandum that the balconies overlooking the bike path are subject to an MBTA license or easement agreement of some kind. And I'd like to make sure we're really clear on the process of what would happen if that were not able to be secured.
It's been secured.
It's been secured. Okay, great.
We have
Thank
a
you.
license agreement with them, and we've been paying them monthly for 4 months now.
But balconies, you don't have yet.
Right, but apparently, once the license is signed, you got to keep paying them. So
good gig if you can get it. Okay, all right. So, I think what I'm going to do is keep the written record open until the 15th at noon. And then probably it seems like the very strong likelihood is we can close this out very quickly on the 21st, unless something goes absolutely sideways, which I don't anticipate.
Mr. Chair, this is Steve Carey in the planning division. I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to point out that Ann Vigorita does still have her hand raised. I wasn't sure if there was something
I did not
she
see
wanted to
that.
add.
Yep,
Good evening,
and-
once again, Attorney Vigorito here. Mr. Chairman, I do have the unit numbers. I was able to locate them in my file, so
Okay.
if you'd like, I can give them to you now, and I will still forward the AHIP over.
Yeah.
So you have that. So level 2, it'll be unit number 2021B, and that's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, which measures 549 square feet. Unit number 209. 1B, a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, which measures 589 square feet. Then on level 3, unit 302, that's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath with a balcony, which measures approximately 549 square feet. Unit 306, 1B, this is an ADA 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit, which measures 673 square feet. And then unit 4 on level 4, it's unit 403. It's a 1-bed, 1-bath, which measures 516 square feet. And like I said, I will forward the entire AHIP over to the board.
Okay. And a good question that was just kind of raised to me, is you said that the last neighborhood meeting was March 23rd of 22.
Yes.
How, if at all, has what we're seeing tonight, how does that differ from what was presented to the neighborhood in March of 22?
I mean, you mean the appearance of the building?
Just generally, like anything substantive that would have changed between then and now, unit mix, was there parking in March of 22 and now there's not,
Right.
things like that.
Well, the things that changed were, issues that the neighborhood, raised as concerns at the meeting. So we worked through whatever concerns that the neighborhood may have, brought issue with, one of which, and we hear it a lot at these neighborhood
Yeah.
meetings, is, what is it going to be like during construction, especially down in this neighborhood? They were concerned, and, the team did suggest that, of course, they're going to stay within the regulatory hours, and, and Alon Sassoon, who's done several projects, in the city, he's out there, at the forefront, and he communicates, with the neighbors. So I know he has a nice rapport. I mean, I think Tori Antonino, who I don't think she's a direct abutter per se, but, she sees Alon at a lot of different meetings, and, I know, she's always like voiced whatever concerns or whatever, other issues she may have, through the team and to him. So, on any project with Mr. Sassoon, he works with the neighborhood tremendously.
I appreciate all that. So, I mean, outside of kind of the comment of, oh God, what's construction gonna be like? Can you give me just what kind of concerns were raised by the neighborhood that you think were addressed?
I can answer that, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So some of the concerns were there weren't enough bike parking. That was one thing we heard. We spoke a lot to Councilwoman Beatrice Gomez, and I still communicate with her often. And if something comes up with any of the neighbors, she texts me, and then we have a conversation with that person. So not having enough bike parking was one thing. There was the restaurant was a little smaller. The neighborhood actually wanted a bigger restaurant. That was another thing. I can't think of anything that was like a large concern though. They were all just very small concerns. There was a lot of support for having like a nice restaurant on the bike path in the summertime, and Phil designed a really beautiful building. So there was a lot support for that.
Yeah, I would say too, a lot of the concerns were actually related to the vehicular parking. So safety for pedestrians, how you get in and out. We actually had a really like tight ramp and somehow made it work. It looked like magical geometry. So I think everyone was pretty happy when the parking went away.
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, apologies, it's Attorney Vigorito again. You know, at some of these neighborhood meetings, so many things will stand out to you, like when there's, you know, issues, you know, these meetings and, you know, as a team, you know, we were all there. There was nothing that seemed so, you know, overly concerned by the neighbors. I mean, they were, we talked through them during the neighborhood meeting and, you know, the changes were made. So that's why I apologize. It really, there was, we never got that there was like, you know, non-support. It was supportive, but just concerns and questions that, you know, we worked through with them as a team.
Yep. And I think that was reflected in the fact that nobody spoke in opposition tonight. So, okay. Thank you all very much. I think we're going to continue this to the 21st with written comment open till the June to planning@somervillema.gov. Chair moves to continue this agenda item to the 21st, seconded by Amelia. Steve, if you could please call the roll.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Deborah Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Jahan Habib.
Aye.
Michael Capuano.
Aye. Okay, this agenda
Thank you
item is
very much.
continued. Agenda items continued to the 21st. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. What do we have left? 45 Mystic Avenue. I think they're the only one left, right? Okay. We've got a little bit of time left. I'd like to invite 45 Mystic Avenue to present, to be opened following it having been continued. I'd like to have their applicant team unmuted, identified, and all sorts of good things.
This is Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Through the chair to the attendees of the meeting, if you'd like to be promoted to panelist, please use the raise hand function. I see Adam Burns has raised his hand. I'll promote Adam. I'll promote you to panelist, along with Krista Lucas, Eric Zackerson, number of people I will promote.
It's basically everybody who's left in the attendees.
All right, and in order to join as a panelist, you may need to briefly leave the meeting. If there is anyone that was unable to join as a panelist, please, again, use the raise hand function.
We should have Ann Vigorito and Phil Sema as well.
Great. Both should be panelists now. If you would like to share screen, if anyone from your team would like to share screen, please identify yourself and I will make you a co-host so that you can have those screen sharing privileges.
This is John Beatty with Boston Pinnacle Properties. If you could please give me co-host, I'll be sharing my screen.
Sure.
Good evening. This is Ann Vigorito. I am the attorney on this project. I'm just going to introduce the team. I think I did that at one of our other hearings, and then John Beatty will take over for the presentation. So Boston Pinnacle Properties, John Beatty and Adam Burns are our primaries. And then one of their partners, Boston Lab Services, Eldon Linez is joining us. Our architect is Context Design, and that's Eric Zackerson. We have an architect consultant, and that is Philip Seymour from Balance Architects. Our transportation and mobility engineer is HSH Christina Lucas. Our landscape architect, Verdant Landscape Architecture, and Katia Posado. Sustainability, we have Soden Sustainability, Colleen Soden, and Aaron French are joining us. I will now mute myself and ask that John Beatty take over.
This is John Beatty again with Boston Pinnacle Properties. Just like to say good evening, Mr. Chair and planning board members. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Really looking forward to presenting this. This has been a 2-year process, and we couldn't be more happy to present this proposal to you all for our master plan special permit here at 45 Mystic Avenue. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible to be conscious of everyone's time, including the other presenters. I would first like to say that we appreciate all the comments and suggestions put forth thus far from the various planning departments. We do believe that our proposal fully complies with the Somerville zoning ordinance, and the plans that will be shown tonight have addressed any and all comments from planning and mobility up until this point. I would first like to start out by giving a high-level description of our project here at 45 Mystic Ave and a bit of a background out about how this project came to be, as I feel that this is vital to really understanding our proposal. As for the building itself, and it's not listed here, Eric will get into building dimensional aspects in a little bit, but the building itself will be a 10-story building. It will contain 50,000 square feet, with the primary function being an incubator laboratory, which I will also get into momentarily. On the ground floor, there will be a large loading facility along with makerspace and a gallery for local artists to display their works. This building will also possess the highest level of sustainability with a LEED Platinum grade, of which we are extremely proud. Did want to take some time to explain the primary motivation behind this project, and that is to bring much needed incubator lab inventory to Somerville. Before the onset of this project, a colleague of ours, as Ann mentioned, Eldon Lanes, who was on the call with us as well, he's the owner of a company called Boston Lab Services. He was describing to Adam and myself the life science incubator landscape in Somerville and the surrounding area in Cambridge. Boston Lab Services is basically a fast-growing company that works intimately with life science and biotech startup companies, specializing in facility management and operations, assisting clients with inventory management, stocking supplies, basically any and all operational activities that occur inside laboratories, both big and small. Boston Lab Services does that. And this is precisely why we decided to partner with Boston Lab Services on this project, because of their extensive knowledge of laboratory space and tenants alike. BLS truly does understand the needs of these smaller companies, but the most important thing that these startups need is bench space. It's smaller lab space where a handful of employees can conduct experiments, exchange ideas, create solutions, do what they do best. In recent years, BLS has seen these startups struggle to find the adequate bench space they need to really kickstart their operations and get their companies up and running. In short, as I mentioned briefly earlier, there is an extreme lack of small lab floor plate inventory, and it is preventing startup prosperity and growth within this sector. So this is where we come in as a developer. Having partnered with Boston Lab Services, our proposal aims to fill that inventory gap and create a home for these startups. So by building 9 floors of small laboratory space intended solely for small startup companies, we'll create a sort of innovation hub and a space where these companies can grow, have access to state-of-the-art laboratory facilities and services, and grow to the point where they will be big enough to move into the larger floor plates that are currently offered in bulk in Somerville and in Cambridge alike. Most importantly, we will be bringing small businesses to Somerville and giving them a home and a place to prosper. As for the ground floor, which I alluded to earlier, we are creating a space that is geared towards small business, but another type of small business, right? Specifically artists that exist here in Assembly Point and in Somerville in general, which we believe aligns well with the Summer Vision plan for the sub-district in Assembly Square called Assembly Point, which seeks to keep the sub-district open and welcoming to artisans and makers alike. Here on the ground floor, we'll include an artist studio and have the building lobby function as a gallery of sorts to showcase a rotating display of artworks from Somerville artists from Boston and the local areas. We believe that this space will function as a bridge between two very different kinds of small business owners and employees alike. I do want to welcome Adam or Eldon to chime in with any thoughts that they might like to add before we get into the plans.
I have nothing to add, John. You're doing a fantastic job, but I just do want to say Adam Burns, Boston Pinnacle Properties, business address 599 East Broadway in South Boston. Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for taking the time to hear our proposal and follow along with this presentation. We do apologize that it is at this late hour, but we'll move through it as quickly as possible. But we really are excited to ensure that everybody understands the depth of this project. So with that, John, I don't see Eldon joining us as a panelist right now, but I did send a text to him. So if you want to continue, you may.
I don't have anything to add. Adam, I'm here too. Thank you.
Thank you, Eldon. With that, I'll pass the torch to Eric and the context team to take us through the architectural plans and zoning. Eric, just let me know when you want to change the slide and I will abide.
Thank you. This is Eric Zackerson, architect with Context, and I've been working with the team to develop this and working with planning to bring it to state we see today. 45 Mystic Avenue, as you see, is along Mystic Avenue here, right at I-93. The red square in the center of the page, but you see its proximity to the kind of major arteries. Next slide. So this is the lot as it is today. It has been a auto repair facility for a while. You see the low brick building that on the sidewalk has the one entrance door and the garage door, and then on the side has parking, surface parking, and our one-story neighbors to the right and to the left, the Enterprise to the right and the Ironworks to the left. And then this is the view along Mystic Avenue. One would forgive you if you hadn't noticed the site recently, but basically it's the left side of Mystic Avenue, or as you go west, the left side is the raised portion of I-93, and then our building and our neighbors are on the right. Next slide. A view north at Mystic Avenue. Next slide. Yeah, and then we'll get into the zoning and massing. So the existing lot area is 88,640 square feet. The maximum FAR allowed is 10. We're proposing a 125-foot tall, 10-story building that would have an FAR of 6.0. The building footprint that fits on the site is 91 feet by 60 feet. And that's how we get to the grand total of 52,185 feet. You see here we're proposing a front yard setback that is 0, in particular at the upper levels, and on the side and rear yard is 5 feet. Next slide. This will become a lot more apparent once we get into the kind of the visuals of it. So this is a view from the south looking north across the site. Those of you that are obviously you're all familiar with this. The building in the background is the Home Depot, the empty Circuit City lot. The surface lot is on the left. Grand Union Boulevard is to the right of our project. And the building in the middle of the red outline is the 10-story building that we're proposing, 125-foot tall lab building. You can see to our left and our right are the one-story brick or masonry buildings that we would be adjacent to. Next slide. we kind of spin around, this becomes a lot more obvious, or clear, I think. So Mystic Avenue and the expressway in this view, which is looking west, from the east looking west, you see our building, and you see how it fronts on Mystic, and it would be very, very apparent from I-93. Next slide. And then a view from the north looking south, over I-93. Again, you see the 10-story massing. Next slide. And then one more a little bit higher up, but also just kind of wanted to show its relationship to Grand Union Boulevard, and its relationship to Mystic, and how that pedestrian walkway or sidewalk as in the front of the building is kind of along Mystic. Next slide. So very important just to kind of what this building is going to be along I-93. I know that there's been a lot of support for taller buildings being pushed along the I-93 in some of the recent planning efforts, and that's what this building would be. Is the 9 stories, you'd see at least 6 of them pretty prominently above the highway, and it really as you can see here, feels like it would be tall. It would be right very close, even though there is the Mystic Avenue in between the 2 buildings. Next slide. And then looking the other direction, kind of over your shoulder as you drive along I-93, or if you're coming in the opposite direction, you'd see this the building very prominently announcing Assembly Row for those who are coming north on Mystic Avenue. Next slide. So a plan of the site to show how it's accessed and how it would be used. Along the bottom of the page is Mystic Avenue. Our neighbors are on 55 and 37 are shown in the right in the white boxes. The building is shown to the left edge of the property, 5 feet from the left edge, 5 feet from the back of the property. And on the right side is a pocket park that would be almost 25 feet wide and run the whole depth of the site. This would draw people in to the property, create an element that would meet some of the planning goals of this particular site, and allow for that kind of alleviation from the normal sidewalk. Also shown on here is the sidewalk at the bottom of the page with 2 street trees being developed, and the idea is clearly to make this portion of the walking sidewalk much more pleasant than it might be today. Again, yeah, 52,000 square feet. Just the chart in the upper right, the lot area is 8,640 square feet, and the FAR would be 6.0. Next slide. A plan of the ground floor, which might help a little bit more to understand how the kind of servicing of the site would be. So the white zone is the lobby and main portion of the building, shown in the middle here, and there would be a loading zone that would allow you to come into the property and service the building. So I think that'll be talked about a little more in the mobility slides. So the 2 red, larger red triangles are the pedestrian entrances, one right off of Mystic Avenue and one through the pocket park, so that people who choose to come in and out through the pocket park or activate it, we want to draw people into that space and make it more active. So we have that larger entrance off of the pocket park, but also a convenient entrance off of Mystic Avenue. Next slide. And the building as it's programmatically laid out in section. So begins with a basement under all of this, which will have some of the mechanical spaces. The first floor would be that maker space and lobby. There would be a second floor that has a portion of amenity space. And then above those levels, each level would have lab spaces designated in kind of the lab modules that make a lot of sense. And then the remainder of the space on each floor would be office space, which might be leased to the same tenants, might be leased as an option to other tenants.
The idea is to fill up what we can with lab space and then to fill up the remainder of the space on each floor, which doesn't modularly work with labs, to be office and support spaces that those tenants can use, can lease individually or as part of the group. Next slide. And then a massing of the building a little bit more solid, an aerial from the kind of southeast looking down, very similar to the original, the drawing that we started with, where you see the large surface lots to our left. You see Grand Union Boulevard arching over the top and right side of the page. And you see how this building would be the major development along Mystic Avenue, this section of Mystic Avenue in the near future. Next slide. And then just going back to that area also, we can kind of reconfirm where we are, that the red rectangle here, the rectangle shape is the site, and you see it in relationship to the neighbors that exist today. Next. And then a few aerial views from the 9th floor so that we could see how the building, what the views from the building would be, and its relationship to the rest of the Assembly Row buildings. So this is from the 9th floor. The view looking out over those surface lots, over those buildings, to the rest of the more recent developments, taller developments that are in Assembly Row. Next slide. And then a view looking the other direction, kind of to reiterate how what a fantastic space this could be to attract lab tenants and other tenants into the building. Next slide. And then I believe with that, we're going to hand it over to Krista.
Excellent. Thanks, Eric. I'm Krista Lucas. I'm a senior transportation engineer with Howard Stein Hudson. I'm going to talk fast. That will get us through it faster. So here's our loading. It does look a little like a T-bone. In terms of mobility, the project has gone through a detailed transportation review and thorough vetting with the mobility department. We received an approved with conditions mobility master plan last December, so a year ago. We submitted our transportation impact study in January. We submitted additional materials after additional count data for Saturdays for retail was requested, and we submitted those in May and June of 2023. And our latest draft TAP went in this past October, which is what this slide speaks to. So to the north, we're going to have, which is the left side of your page where that truck is going in. We will keep a curb cut there. Currently the site, as Eric said, has 2 curb cuts. But so we will keep a 17-foot curb cut there so that we can have all of our loading access front in and front out. There will be nothing backing into our loading area. Currently, all of the loading bays along Mystic Ave, you have to back in, and there's significant loading that happens. But at Mobility's request and for safety and the future bike lane that is proposed here, and changes that will happen along Mystic Ave, given the neighborhood plan, all access will be entering and exiting. So that's where this T-bone came from. We now have a lot of, it looks like a lot of loading, it is, and so we can turn a truck around, and it's not even a very big truck. So our maximum vehicle, and this will be in the permitting documents, is, and it's in the TAP, is a 23-foot length box truck. So it's a small truck, and it's an average usually is around 35. So we're going to use a miniature one. We're using a little one. It will be in all of the permitting documents as well as in the agreements with any vendor. So what it does, it will pull in. Mystic Avenue is one-way northbound adjacent to our site. So it's 3 lanes northbound. So so if you tilt your head to the left, you're going straight. And so you come in, you do a 3-point turn into the loading bay, and then to exit, that's the the truck leaving on the right, it comes out straight out and takes it right onto Mystic, because again, Mystic is one way northbound, north being to Page left. So, so this was redesigned really to make sure that we have the least impact on Mystic Avenue as possible. The project is really, it's landlocked by the adjacent parcels. There is no alley to the back. The only access we have is on Mystic Ave. And so in order to load and unload, we really do have to be on Mystic Ave because that's the option. So, and so that's the way we've minimized that. Other mobility issues, just to do a quick summary, we have no parking on the site. So all parking will happen within the Assembly District. And so within the 2,650 spaces that are already within the Assembly Row area, or Assembly Square. I've been here long enough that I still think it was Assembly Row. And there are 2,650 surface spaces and 3,540 garage spaces. So that is where, and an additional 1,800 planned. And so that's in fact where the employees will park. We did do their arrivals and departures within the transportation impact study. And so that was submitted as well. Bike parking, we will have 7 racks on the site with 14 spaces for visitors for the zoning requirements, 18 secure basement spaces for employees, including bike repair and showers. And those are the mobility highlights. So I'm happy to answer any questions when we're all finished. Thank you. We had more slides than I thought.
This is John Beatty with Boston Pinnacle Properties. Krista, do you think it would be wise to comment on any of these, or do you think?
Right, I had the old presentation, which just had the loading and the mobility. So, so if you back up, yes, let's go ahead and go through them. So let's go back to the loading one, because I just did that one. Let's go. So here's the bike parking. Bike parking on the right snip is, that's the basement. So if you go page right, that's the basement level. Keep going to the right box, our basement level. Yes, there. So the bike room is there on the right. That will have 18 spaces. It's on the bottom corner with the boxes and the arrow. Those are our 18 bicycle spaces that will be in the basement. You will access them by the elevators. The public racks, there are three in the very front of the building, parallel to Mystic Avenue, and then additional ones in the Pocket Park. The Pocket Park used to be bigger, but then in fact we had to T-bone our loading in, and things changed. So next slide, please. Here's pedestrian access. Again, Eric spoke to this with the front door, both on Mystic Ave, as well as another lobby door off the Pocket Park in the middle of the building, on that middle right side. There's also emergency access to the back of the site. And so we are coordinating with Mobility, who has requested to make sure that path all the way around is accessible to the right. So we will continue to work with them on the tap on that, but otherwise that Mobility is all set with our draft transportation access plan. As part of the actual site permit, we will finalize the draft transportation access plan, and it'll become a final transportation access plan, and we can finally drop the draft. Next slide, please. So here's the proposed signing and changes to curb cut. We're closing the one on the right. So the existing curb cut on the right is around approximately 20 feet. That closes completely. We will keep a 17-foot curb cut on the north side. There on the left where the arrow is. That's so that we can get the 23-foot panel truck in and out. Some nice street trees, some no parking. There's a bus stop just to the right off the page that you cannot see. So it's a great spot for us. Next slide.
I believe that concludes it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, hi, and then go to the landscape plan. My name is Erin Hosseini Fitch from Verdant Landscape Architecture, the landscape architect on the project. I'll just review the current landscape plan briefly, shown here on the current slide. We are proposing a civic pocket park that's spanning the southeastern portion of the site. The Pocket Park will provide various gathering areas for both users of the office lab and pedestrians from the neighborhood. The various zones create opportunity and integration of the programs within the interior as they could spill out into the park, such as temporary outdoor gallery displays for the makers to utilize. And then while also providing buffer from the busy Mystic Avenue and Route 93 beyond, the park will consist of numerous large shade trees that will add to the urban forest. And plantings will predominantly consist of native plant species to enhance the biodiversity of the neighborhood. And then beyond the proposed civic space, the exterior site of the office lab development will propose buffer plantings along the side and rear property lines, exterior bike parking at the front of the site, and the addition of new street tree plantings where none currently exist today. And I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. And lastly, to our sustainability consultant. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron French with Southern Sustainability, the sustainability consultant on the project. We're very proud to have worked extensively with the team to create this path to platinum. Currently, as it stands, we're counting 80 yes points, as you can see in the top left of this scorecard, with 15 maybe yes points. There were comments earlier regarding not having some sort of buffer of those 80 points, but these 50 points, these 15 maybe yes points are very likely we'll get at least 5 of those. So just kind of doing a quick run through the LEED checklist. On the integrated process side, like I said, we've been doing extensive meetings with the various consultants on the team to ensure that we can achieve the points that we're putting in the yes category. On the location and transportation side, we're in a great transit-oriented area within half a mile to Sullivan Square Station. We are providing multiple indoor and outdoor bike racks, along with there's an adjacent blue bike station. And then we are not providing any parking in order to reduce the transportation impacts as much as possible. On the sustainable site side, we're making sure to specify high albedo materials in order to reduce heat island reduction. We're very conscious of light pollution, so we're speccing fixtures with cutoffs as to not pollute the night sky. And as this is a core and shell development, we are working to create a comprehensive set of tenants design and construction guidelines so that the future tenants in this building will conform to the high sustainability standards that we set. In terms of water, we're using native adaptive vegetation so that we won't have to irrigate the site at all. So saving a lot on outdoor water. And on the inside, we're specifying low flow fixtures so that these fixtures will use the least amount of water possible while minimizing the amount of plumbing maintenance that will need to happen. On the energy side, we've done an energy model and we're counting 45% below an ASHRAE 2010 baseline. So a super energy efficient building. It's 100% electric as required by code. And in addition to that, we're achieving the most amount of points for renewable energy for the purchase of renewable energy credits for the project. I just want to point out that with a lab building and its inherently high EUI, rooftop space gets very tight because of being all electric and needing very many heat pumps that need to be on the roof, and the fact that solar cannot cover these heat pumps. We are going to work extensively with the mechanical team to see what area we can dedicate to solar. But as it stands right now, we're not counting solar in the energy model. And then finally, just to wrap things up, materials and resources, we want to specify healthy, low emitting, low VOC materials throughout the project. We're looking into studying the building for an life cycle analysis in order to reduce embodied carbon. And then from an indoor environmental standpoint, we're looking at, again, like I said, very healthy materials and providing all the users within the building quality views to the outdoors. On the innovation and regional priority side, we are achieving all 4 of the points that are identified as regional priority by LEED. And then we are looking to go above and beyond on the material spec for the building and achieve exemplary performance for 2 of those material credits. Yeah, that sums up the sustainability section. Happy to answer any questions that everyone has at the end. Thank you very much.
This is John Beatty with Boston Pinnacle. Thank you very much, Aaron, and my other presenters. With that, I'd like to open it to the floor for the members of the board. If they have any questions, we'll do our best to respond.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I thought it was helpful. So the way I'm looking at this is, yeah, it's kind of late in the evening, right? We have a public hearing, so we'll be taking public testimony. One of the comments that was made kind of at the beginning of the presentation that I want to kind of dig into for a minute is something that was said by someone on the team, that all of the concerns of staff and city departments have been addressed in this. And yet, as I recall, the most updated staff memorandum on this project gives a no recommendation. I don't think I have ever seen a no recommendation made by planning staff on a project. So what I'd like to do is, I think, is it Sarah who's still around for staff, or who's here that can speak on behalf of planning
I'm
staff
here,
on
Mr.
the
Chair.
concerns that would have led to a no recommendation, or explain why staff made a no recommendation.
Mr. Chair, is my audio okay?
Yes, you're great, Sarah.
All right, terrific. Good evening, all. Yeah, we don't do it very often with the planning board, but we do occasionally use this with the zoning board, especially with hardship variances. It's a bit more tricky. So while this project at this master plan special permit level meets the zoning requirements, the timing is unfortunately between a new master plan and potential, then future zoning overlays. So revising the Assembly Square district. So this particular site under the draft neighborhood plan was intended to be, it's known as the Assembly Point microdistrict. And it's intended to be sort of a smaller scale building, more maker space, similar to the Ironworks building that's already there, that sort of artisan craft, smaller scale. For any number of makers, small manufacturers that have been in that area to begin with. So as we have to look at both the comprehensive plan, neighborhood plans, as well as the zoning as part of our findings, knowing that this plan has not been adopted, but it is the intent of the neighborhood, that's where we were having a difficult time actually making a recommendation, because it doesn't sort of meet the future vision of this area.
So I recall this not as some far off thing. I remember having discussions during our debates on the comprehensive plan, at least among other things. Because I didn't realize this neighborhood had a point. To me, it was always it had a name. To me, it was always just like, you know, the Enterprise Building. I remember seeing the vision of the city and a staff of seeing how the entire Assembly Square district kind of scaled down as you got further away from the T. So this is not new to me and to this board. We recall those conversations and some of those you know, renderings of the vision of this area. So that's not a surprise to me. I'm wondering if in an ideal world, because we are going to be coming in to probably formally making an overlay district here, right? What can this applicant do to be forward thinking in meeting the needs of what we're going to be putting in here and what we've been thinking about doing for a number of years? If that's a question that you can answer in the short short term, I think the answer is probably not yet.
Yeah, no, at this point, it's, you know, sort of it would be difficult to answer that. You know, sort of, I mean, I think one of the original thoughts way back when was that some of these smaller parcels in this area would be ideally consolidated to allow for shared access, such as the loading and maybe an alley structure. So yeah, at this point, I'm not, you know, sort of it's difficult to say what might be possible. It's an unfortunate situation of timing.
It is, and I know that one of the considerations that we take in are the guiding principles of our planning documents. And this is certainly included in that. What I think makes sense, because we're at a little bit of a difficult place, is I'd like to take some public testimony because this is a public hearing. I would really find it helpful for the way that I look at this application, to have the applicant, after we take public testimony and maybe perhaps some limited conversation by members of the board, for the applicant to be able to have a further discussion with staff on really what can be done to bring this application in line with what the vision of the neighborhood is, both as a future document that we'll see in a more formal way, but also in our kind of guiding principles that are in our master planning documents and visions that we've been working on for many years, and see where we go from there. Because as a standalone building, this might be okay, but if this is not where we have been looking to go as a community for many years, and this will not work in with other properties in the neighborhood, in the micro district, when that overlay district is finalized, that's going to be a problem. You're going to have a, you know, kind of a sore thumb problem. So that's what I would encourage the applicant to do, is to revisit some concepts with staff to see if we can come up with some way to be able to have a cohesive micro zone here that will work together. That's my initial thought. But what I'd like to do is just to bring it up to any other members of the board that have any kind of limited questions at this point, in light of kind of the complexities of this project, but also in contemplation of the late hour. I see Amelia's hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A substantial concern that I have about this project at this time that I would just like to flag for discussion in the future in case there are different people who should be part of the conversation on either the applicant team or the city team, is that while you are not technically in the flood zone, you are away from being in the flood zone. And I think that you're proposing chemical storage in the basement. And I know that if you were just over that threshold, that would be something that needed to be addressed extensively. So I'd just like to really understand really clearly from perhaps the city side how confident we are in where that line is drawn, and from the applicant side, if what solutions might be available to handle that, because that's a big concern for me. Thank you. I wish Erin were here.
Erin was certainly our subject matter expert when it came to these things. And she is missed all the time. Not that I don't value the rest of you just as much, but she was also highly valued. Does anybody else have any comments or questions of the applicant or of staff at this time? Okay. What I'd like to do then is, I appreciate, Sarah, your thoughts and your commentary on the concerns of staff, because this is not something that we see is a no recommendation. You know, it's almost always the circumstance that by the time it gets to this board, you know, staff has had basically as many opportunities as they can to have a project that they can make a recommendation of a conditional approval for. And the fact that that's not been the case for this application is pretty concerning to me. But I do want to open up this public hearing to anybody in the audience who wants to provide testimony in support of this application. Please raise your hand now, and I'll call on you in the order in which I see you. There are only a few folks, so. Anybody wants to speak in support? Going once, going twice. See Tori's hand. I would like to recognize Tori Antonino.
So Steve Carey in the planning division. I'm going to unmute Tori Antonino. If you could state your name and street of residence for the record, that'd be great.
Hello, my name is Tori Antonino. I live at 65 Boston Street. I see the conundrum here, because, you know, when we are making our neighborhood plans, you know, we have these input, we have community input, and, you know, we come out with something that sometimes resembles it and sometimes not. And the question is, well, how closely do we follow them? For me, this particular situation is interesting because it looks like, unless I read the documents wrong, that there's no parking. And some of the proposal for other developers who are proposing housing and commercial are needing a lot of parking. And for this little area that they're calling the Point, that's going to be sort of artist and makerspace, I still question its proximity to the Mystic and the highway. I see these tall buildings, since we don't yet have any sort of sound screening or any sort of pollution screening on the highway, to be that screening. I wouldn't mind seeing sort of the Point be behind this building or integrated into it, especially since it seems that makerspace and artist space is something that's important to this developer. So, I mean, there's been developments that have been approved for some time now, and I don't know how many it have been approved since we have started making progress on the plan, on this assembly plan, which has not yet officially been approved. So I would love to see a solution that is beneficial in terms of this developer supporting the arts and creative economy and makerspace, and that Point I don't think is a necessarily a safe place that we would want to have arts and makers hanging out in, unless we have some sort of barrier. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tori. Anybody else want to speak in support of the application? Please raise your hand. Going once, going twice, seeing none. I close that portion of the public hearing and open up testimony. If anybody that wants to speak in opposition of the application or otherwise express concern. Once, twice, 3 times a testimony, seeing none, I close that portion of the public hearing. I'll keep the written comment period open until the 15th at noon to planning@somervillema.gov. Is there any other comments or questions by members of the planning board, members of staff at this time before I request that this application be continued for some further thoughtful discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is Steve Carey with the Planning Division. I did want to note that Adam Burns from the applicant team did have their hand raised. I'm not sure if you're still taking comments from them.
From the applicant team, I can certainly have a comment. I'm not going to take testimony. It's inappropriate for an applicant to provide testimony, but yes, we can. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I did just want to get some clarity on your previous comment about how to marry a future plan with the current ordinance that is in place for the site. Did you have any sort of ideas? Is that
so that's kind of what I was hoping you would work out with staff over the next period of time to see if we can get to a place where they can make a recommendation in light of both future plans as well as kind of existing zoning guideline principles that we've got. Because obviously the nuts and bolts of did you check this box with mobility, check this box with sustainability, check this box with that's great, and obviously that's very important, but that's specifics that help us reach the overlying zoning principles and guidelines. And it seems as though that isn't quite there yet with this application. Because I think if it were, then I think Sarah would have made a different report to this board, and the staff memorandum would have read differently than I think it does. So I'm not the person I think to give the advice. I think the appropriate path forward is for further discussion with staff to have an idea of how that marriage can work in a way such that they can make a positive recommendation to this board. Because I would love to see that. I really would.
Yeah, and we're very passionate about bringing this sort of, I guess, employment hub for these small businesses to Somerville. So whatever form that takes, we're more than happy to work with staff to conform with, whatever they see fit. And we're, working on this for 2 years, but we're happy to do it for a longer period, whatever it takes. So
I appreciate your recognition of that, Adam. I really do. And so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
For sure. At this time, unless anybody has anything else that they would like to add, I think I can see everybody. I'm going to move anybody else. So I'm missing anybody? No. Okay. I'm going to move to continue this agenda item to the 21st, seconded by Amelia. If I could have Steve call the roll, please.
Steve Carey in the Planning Division. Amelia Aboff.
Aye.
Deborah Howard Easton.
Aye.
Luke Schuster.
Aye.
Michael McNeely.
Aye.
Shahan Habib.
Aye.
Michael Capuano.
Aye. This will be brought up again on the 21st. So with no further business before the planning board, I just kind of looked over and I realized that for the good of the Patriots, I for the remainder of the season I shouldn't watch the game. They're up 21-3, I think. But at this time, I am going to move to adjourn this meeting of the planning board, seconded by Amelia. Steve, can I please have the roll call?
This is Steve Carey in the planning division, Amelia Aboff, Deborah Howard Easton,
Aye.
Luke Schuster,
Aye.
Michael McNeely,
Aye.
Jahan Habib,
Aye.
Michael Capuano.
Aye. Thank you all very much for a really productive evening tonight with both the planning board agenda items as well as the joint hearing amendment discussion. So see you all in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Good night.
Thank you.